Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. New day, new show, new topic, new guest, and an angle today. An angle that we haven't covered. Maybe we've alluded to it in previous shows, and a lot of the shows we cover here, especially with me, we talk about health, wellness, fitness, and we talk sometimes even martial arts. But one area that does impact health is safety, security. Having, a knowledge of how to maybe even defend yourself, what measures to take. The world is crazy we live in. And, we're going to address those items today with a special guest. And my guest is, first of all, to me is a hero, is a former, law enforcement officer, and we'll talk about that. And also, he is literally helping people. One day at a time, one person at a time, and even families and groups and companies, and he's doing a lot of stuff. And really, he's known as the safety man. We're going to talk about that. So with me, I have Corey Jones, the safety man himself, and we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff. And first things, as always, first of all, Corey, welcome to the show, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. Can I call you Hurricane?
Hurricane it is.
Okay, I like that. I used to watch WWF. Don't tell anybody, right? Then stand back. There's a hurricane coming through as one of the characters, and for some reason, I like that. So, yeah, thank you for having me on the show. Just call me safetyman.co is my website. Anything I can do to help you keep you safe, your house of worship, your home, your office, your school, your daycare, whatever it is, come see safetyman.co, and I got you.
Well, thank you for that. And by the way, I like how you stated it, like house of worship, daycare, home, and I want to address that in just later on the show, because there are things that happen to all these places, and in recent years we've had shootings, active shooters, at synagogues, at churches, and mosques, all around the world. We've had also school problems and school shootings, and everybody's listening is always concerned. We're always concerned about our health and safety first. I mean, is a key word. We hear it all the time. But do we even know what that means? Do we know even how to do this? And what are some of the situations that we can have that can be detrimental to our health and really family health, friends' health, colleagues, work, you name it. I mean, I remember years back, a couple of years back, I was at a company and they were doing drills, like, safety drills and like active shooting drills and things like that. And so there was even a discussion to bring in some federal agencies to actually, cooperate and do some real, scenarios where you can really have to know what to do in this particular, crazy event. But so we can talk about that. But really, health, safety is one. I mean, you can be physically healthy. That's great. And walk in the street, something happens, and now your health is at stake because some event is taking place that is not so pleasant, and maybe you can be hurt, and that's a big deal. Sometimes at home, there's burglaries, there's people robberies, people get invaded in their homes. Schools, as I said, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's either we are somebody's kid or we have kids. If not, we have nephews and nieces and family members.
Yes.
And school is dear to us, and it doesn't even matter if we have no family members that have school age, but just knowing that kids are at risk sometimes is a big deal. Yes. And so let's talk about, before we get into all that, let's talk about your background. I know you were a former police officer, and and I know that's been also a big topic of discussion with, the last couple of years has been rough. But I do want to say this just as a disclaimer. I am pro law enforcement. I love, what you guys do. And yes, I mean, Not everybody. Sometimes we're humans, right? Even some of the
Yes.
law enforcement officers can be, can do wrong, whatever. But that's why we have laws for everybody. But at the end of the day, I think the overall is that you guys do well. In your case, you're retired, but the law enforcement units and just agents in general and officers all over the world. I mean, they do a good deed. I mean, they help. They see that we are safe, and that's a big thing. And I don't think some people may have some controversy about this and maybe different feelings about certain things in light of last year's couple of events. But at the end of the day, I think overall. We do want to appreciate the work that's being done by all those people that put their lives at risk. I mean, recently we had some deaths in New York City in terms of a couple of officers that were shot and fortunately that and so those are things that people. I personally think this way: if we have no enforcement and we have less belief and trust in our officers out there, I think that's a problem because then the risks of criminal activities will increase, and sometimes we don't even think about it. I mean, we live our lives happy knowing that somebody is out there doing the right thing to prevent problems and to avoid to help us not be in a situation where we are not safe and stuff, where we have to fend and defend ourselves. That's a crazy thing. Now, I personally have not been into the law enforcement, as an individual. I've been in the martial arts, so I've been kind of connected to it to a degree of self-defense and things like that. And we have colleagues and, friends that actually we practice with that are actually from different types of law enforcement agencies. But, and it doesn't matter. I'm talking about whether, local, international, I think the forces out there are doing a good job. And, I still believe that we shouldn't penalize the whole work that's being done by maybe a couple of individuals bad. And same thing with humans. I mean, we can't say everybody's bad. There's bad elements in society and we have to take care of them. And, that's about it. So that's it. There's a good human, there's a bad human. I think you guys, the law enforcement groups do a lot of good work, and if not all the good work that's out there to see that life goes on, that children go to schools happy and safe. They don't have to think about, watching their backs. Same thing for us. You drive in your car, you want to make sure that nobody's going to just crash in you. There's people, that are monitoring these things. The more you see, I mean, I know there's a big thing about when you're driving and you see a police car and you're like, oh, take your time, right? Let me see that speed. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, if no one had to worry about that, then people would do whatever they want. That would be like a racetrack, and God forbid, catastrophe will strike. And we hear those stories all the time. So, like I said, I want to just from this platform to thank everyone that does a terrific job out there to help and keep people, lives, families, and communities safe. So that's just my thing. So your story with the law enforcement started at a younger age.
Yes. So at 20 years old, I decided I wanted to be a police officer. So there's a short town over here in New Jersey called Wildwood, and I drove myself down there. It's about 90 minutes away. And I got hired as a summer police officer, which meant I had full police powers. I was walking back and forth on the boardwalk, quelling, preventing disturbances, and then handling a disturbance if there was one at a ripe old age of 20. So I was extremely immature. I didn't know a lot about life and about law enforcement, but I was fair. I wasn't necessarily proud of the way I was then. I've definitely matured in my law enforcement career and in my personal personality. I matured, and the last 26 years of my career, I'd like to say I was professional. In the last 5, I employed some verbal de-escalation tactics in the way I deal with everybody, and my compliance rate went up, my complaint rate went down, and my safety and use of force safety up, use of force down.
Well, that. Thank you for bringing that up, because again, a lot of the officers, they start young, and we all know when we're all young, we have a little bit of a personality. That's that. We all have that. I mean, there's no one that hasn't been in that age, or at least or currently in that age group, that you have a different level of security or sense of security, and also when you get a little bit of authority or power, that can be sometimes overwhelming, and maybe not everybody knows how to handle themselves when they have that. I mean, you do have the authority, you do have the power, and you believe at that point that everybody owes you.
Right.
And sometimes you're right, the reactions or the interventions can be a little more rough or extreme, and you may even you use the word de-escalation. You may in that case, you would be escalating some situation. But that comes from lack of experience, as you said, and just being novice and just learning. And that's not something you can probably train on that in school, in the academy, but that's usually they give you there's only limited months in the academy and you can't learn it all.
Yes.
It's one thing to learn in the academy, and another is to really practice in real community and where people actually are, get in your face when you see situations.
Yes.
And it's by the way, it's a rough job. So I listen, I know it's not easy because I've seen even without even law enforcement. I mean, I've seen security officers and, even at clubs or restaurants, whatever, people get in your face and, oh, what are you going to do? And it escalates quickly. And, luckily it gets diffused also, but at the end of the day, it could get into some real bad, outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of what I try to do also with my company Safetyman Consulting is deal with professional security agencies and give them basically the same training that I would give a law enforcement officer. So I hold security officers in any state. I'm certified to create them in New Jersey, but any security officer that I'm training in any state, I hold them to the same standard that I hold a police officer. So whether it be the range, the de-escalation, the report writing, the use of handcuffs, baton, taser, pepper spray, I hold them to the exact same standard. I use the same training manuals because I want the profession to be something that everyone is proud of. Because you as a citizen may be dealing with somebody in a security uniform who you're not sure is security or police. And if you have a bad experience, you're going to tell that story and it could tarnish the badge of the police officer. So my goal is to make the stories that are told at parties of interactions with law enforcement good stories.
I would like to hear that. I mean, you're right. And listen, I mean, it's like I said, it is a rough job because when you're out there, you don't know what to expect. And there's a risk for you as an officer. And, you don't know what that risk, can be until you're in the situation and then it escalates and now you're surrounded and you don't know if someone's going to pull something from their pocket or back, whatever. You don't know. It's very, I can see the dangers of that. I mean, I'm in martial arts, I'm trained to kind of observe and kind of understand where I walk in and see, evaluate situations in advance. But no matter how you prepare yourself, you don't know until you find yourself in front of a situation. Now you have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And now the other thing, you hit
the nail on the head right there is preparing yourself in advance. So if I know the type of situation that I may be sent to, a fight in progress, a domestic in progress, a suspicious person there now, I start the role play and I teach my officers start the role play in my head. All right, what's the location? What's the best avenue? What's a plan B avenue to approach? Where can I park, get cover, and observe the situation without giving away my position yet? And then how do I want to contact this person? Should I wait for backup? Should we form like a tactical L where somebody has to look this way and this way to talk to us? And then we start with that professional language. Hey, I'm Corey from the police department. The reason I'm here talking to you is because somebody said you're out in the middle of the street screaming. Is everything okay? Is there any reason for that? Right? So I'm starting it off with professional language. I set myself up in position of advantage and safety. So it makes it less likely that you're going to start an attack where I'm not going to be able to react properly. That's the whole goal with law enforcement. And what we've been finding in these shootings, these controversial shootings, is that officers have been finding themselves in situations where they're behind the speed curve. So they didn't get a chance to pre-plan their approach or their encounter to the same extent that I just explained.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, and that's pretty good because you're right. It's a science, it's an art. Also, there's methods to this, and obviously that's what you teach now, to agencies and law enforcement, and even I guess private citizens, in terms of maybe safety protocols. But the idea is you're right. I mean, everybody, and by the way, you have a life just as well as anybody else. And just because you're an officer, that doesn't mean that, that you can just risk your life for it. And then you have to be careful on how to approach. And you're right. When you walk in, not knowing in a blind and God forbid something is happening, it may be too late, to even, get out of it. And that could be for anyone for that matter. But you guys voluntarily go into those situations. I mean, the odds of a citizen getting into it, frequently will be less than the actual enforcer, because that's the job. You go out there and while people are running away from problems, you go into the problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's exactly. That's a big deal, right? And it comes with a level of respect, but also a level of adjustment, because you have to adjust to your situation and adapt immediately. And that's not, it happens in frequent, in split seconds, how you determine what's going on. And again, we talked about, even law enforcement shooting, citizens, whatever. And then they're like, well, it takes split seconds between someone noticing a phone or noticing something. And I'm not justifying, any of those shootings, but the idea is it's difficult, and sometimes it's hard to gauge, or at least to unless you're in those shoes in that moment, your adrenaline's kicking, your senses. I mean, not everybody experiences fear, but when you experience fear and you're like in a mode of fight, as opposed to, or flight at the same time, you might react, and those reactions could be bad or good. With time, I think the expertise, comes along, and you can evaluate things a little different, approach them, as you said, with a better caution, and certainly you can probably, reduce that risk.
Yes.
Of getting,
a good example for it would be driving. You remember the first time you were driving and you was on some ice or some slush and your back end started to slip out the first time. What did you get? You got a crazy adrenaline dump, a panic, and then you're trying to remember, do I steer into the skid? Do I steer away from the skid? And if you go away from the skid is terrible. If you steer into the skid too hard, too aggressively, that's not going to work out well for you either. But as you alluded to, is over time and over practice and repetition, you're starting to handle this still unexpected experience with some level of expertise because you've done it before. Your adrenaline can go down. You can make better, faster, more sound decisions.
Listen, I love the analogy, because you're right. I mean, that's for everybody. I think can relate to that one. If you're driving, or everybody that is growing will probably get to those shoes, and it's just a matter of learning that it's going to happen. Yeah. And I don't think anyone has gone through it with that happening. Whether it's sleet, rain, whatever, it can just happen. Period. But yeah, it's all about practice, like everything else. I mean, we have a joke in martial arts, and I'm not sure if you actually practice or you're in while you're in law enforcement or currently, but the white belt, folks are usually the more dangerous.
Yes.
Because when you're a white belt and you learn a technique, you're really rough around the edges and you make it really hard. And so it's more difficult to engage with someone who's, new to the art, as opposed to someone whose expertise is higher, and you flow differently. You're just, what that impact is going to look like. So you already anticipate it. So you understand how to manipulate and maneuver it, as opposed to when you're like, you have no idea what that impact is going to look like. So you just dump someone on the floor and they just crash. Yeah. So it's amazing, but that's like everything else. And, as you progress and you learn, you become a lot more, I guess, professional at whatever it is that you do. But
professional is the key word. Absolutely, sir.
And in your world, I mean, it is life and death matters. I mean, the least of that can cause hurt to you or somebody else. And sometimes even bystanders, people that just not even part of this whole thing, and they just become part of a victim of whatever conflict that escalates. So it is tough. And, like I said, it's a lot of work that you guys do out there. And I know you're not on the force right now, but I know you teach, some of these concepts, and you bring them to the public world, and not just the police work, right?
Right. I teach law enforcement, security, and private citizens.
Yeah, and that includes businesses, families, and stuff. So let's take that to the next level now. The idea of safety. What is how would you quantify that? And to people, like if you were to give advice to people, like how serious do they have to take it? Because most of us, we live our lives like we know it's serious. By the way, just I'm playing on words here, but we know it's serious, but maybe we don't know how serious it should be in some places. Right. And, we don't even we just think that life is peachy and things, we don't even realize that sometimes we come so close to a dangerous situation without even knowing.
Yes. Well, we put ourselves in a situation. Everybody I know who has put themselves in a situation has been texting and driving like, oh, and you have to stop, right? Clearly an unsafe activity, almost a tragic ending to it, but we were able to catch ourselves. So we weren't taking our safety seriously at that moment. And something as minor as that little bit attention distraction could be catastrophic. Could have been a car we're going to hit, could have been a pedestrian we were going to hit, or we could have driven off the side of the road, right? Another definition of how I quantify safety is we've all gone to countries where they don't have OSHA, where they don't have people who come out and inspect these excursions we're going on for going on vacation. And you know as well as I do, there are some things I'm like, this is the safety protocol they have here. I don't know if I want my wife and kids getting on this rope line or jiving off of this cliff, because there's no lifeguard, there's no rescue boat. Their first aid kit is 2 Band-Aids and some Bactine from 1974. So that safety is there. So it all comes down to that feeling of safety. So they've done studies in New York City and other major cities where they're asking people, do you actually feel safer now? And there was a time when they did, and now obviously there's a time when they don't. So my job is at the personal level, at the corporate level, at the government level, or law enforcement level, is to give people the tactics, the techniques, the tools, and the training so they can apply their skill set to make people actually safer and see that it's happening, so they are feeling safer because they're seeing quantifiable results.
Thank you, Corey. And by the way, I like what you just said. I mean, you're right. I don't live in the city now, but I do work in and around the city, all the boroughs. And I know from the 90s to now, or the 80s to now, it had been up and down in terms of safety and protocols. And there were days where you walk in New York City and you would be like so scared. This was like in the late 80s or even mid 80s and early 90s. And then I think with Giuliani at the time as a mayor, things got real tight, and there were more police officers. Everywhere, every corner you had patrols. You had basically everywhere there was a cop. And the safety levels were very, very high. You would walk in, you don't have to worry about anything. Then there had been times where it was not as good. And so again, after 9/11, it changed also because security was higher across the board. Besides just the local enforcement, it was more. Everybody's on edge, and everybody's kind of like very alert. See something, say something. That's the concept. Exactly. So now even public, citizens are basically on call, and so that changed a little bit the dynamics. But then you had few events that happened later on with the Times Square guy, with the car. That changed also the dynamics. Now Times Square is not the old Times Square. You have these barriers everywhere and it's barricades. So yes. A lot of stuff happened, in the last couple of decades, and it just makes it, where that people sometimes wonder, like, what's the next move? What's the next thing? Is it even safe here? Right now we have a war that is waging around the world, and we don't know.
And we're just finishing up a pandemic, So yes. we all had to, and just think about all the information that was coming in. People couldn't even agree on the information, the basic things that we were supposed to do to try to keep ourselves and our neighbor safer from this virus, this pandemic, this pathogen. People couldn't even agree on that. So now it's even harder to have a potential solution, get that solution out, and get everybody to agree to it, embrace it, and then put it into practice. So that's what my job is to create a need for my services, show that my services are effective in a training environment, and then show, whether it be video, testimonials, or something else, where my services or something similar was performed in an actual event and had a positive outcome, where 3 things happened. The victim survived unharmed, the victim was not charged criminally, and the victim was not charged civilly. So if I can accomplish those 3 things with a tactic or a technique or some training that I'm providing for my clients, then I think that I give them a real sense of safety, both feeling safety and they actually are safe. So you would be a perfect example. Studying martial arts, you'd be very easy because you're already used to being aware, reading body language, positioning yourself, all those different things, that reactionary gap, and doing all those different things. You're going to be way ahead of the curve in being safety. And you probably already have your ego in check, where you don't have a problem going, hey man, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm wrong, I'll walk away from it, right? So I always tell my people to do that too. If you can walk away from a fight, this isn't high school, this isn't Roadhouse, and I'm not Patrick Swayze. I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to get out.
Well, Corey, you said it the best, because to be honest with you, the best fight is the one that never happened. Mm-hmm. And really, you're right. Depends on where you are, where you stand in terms of your life, and where your training and all those things. You do gauge. It's not worth it. Sometimes it's really just, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One word can change the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
I apologize, but
my bad.
My bad, exactly. It doesn't take much, right? But It is hard. Ego is a big deal. Most of these conflicts start from nothing. It's like, are you looking at me this way? What do you mean? I can look whatever. And then boom, the next thing, like we're a fist fight. Now somebody pulls some sort of weapon, and now we have an issue. And
yeah.
And so it's crazy. But I do want to talk about those items that you mentioned about the three outcomes that you want, the whether criminal, or like you mentioned the three definitions there. And
yes, the victim survives, unharmed. The victim does not get criminally charged, and my victim does not get civilly charged.
And we'll talk about the difference between those. But before that, you mentioned the pandemic. And I know
yes.
One thing that happened in the beginning of the pandemic was chaos. Let's call it what it is. I mean, people were not sure what's going on, especially when we talk lockdown. I mean, we've seen scenes where people were fighting over food and and it can very easily escalate. I mean, I have seen something of that nature that was actually almost extreme in Sandy. So you're in Jersey, so we had that major, storm a couple of years back. And in the stores, I mean, there's looting, there's things, people were actually like literally just taking whatever they wanted. It got a little rough, and that's just a small disaster. I mean, I don't want to downplay.
Localized, yeah.
But it was a disaster, and this just, as you said, localized. But imagine as a widespread, panic with pandemic or war, or whatever. I mean, things can escalate very quickly, and when people are desperate, they'll become extreme. We see them. I love watching movies that have to do with disasters and things, because it kind of shows me a little bit how people kind of behavior, stuff, patterns, and it never fails. And I don't think it's just far-fetched. I think it's reality. We humans will tend to do that. And as soon as that, it becomes the jungle. And if you have power, you have weapons, you take over, and that's it. And sometimes it becomes your trade. That's exactly what you're going to do, because you're going to take what you want by force. And those are scenarios that the common person may not even be thinking about them. To be honest with you, I think about them all the time. I have my buggy, I have my bag, ready. I have my stuff, but I'm one of those, but I'm not an extreme survivalist, as you would say, but I do know enough to do that. I mean, I have my gear. If I need to bail out to the woods, I can do that. But the fact of the matter is, you think about those and you always wonder, like, especially I have kids, I have family. So you have to always like, I have literally drills with my kids. Like, this is where you need to go if God forbid something happens. Years back in my own neighborhood, we had home invasions, and there was some cultural holiday that was happening, and some of these homes were targeted, and if you happen to be in a neighborhood, you might just be as target as well. And these folks were caught eventually, but they were literally just knocking on doors in a certain hour, and you open the door, they knock you out, they put you in a room, and they take whatever they wanted, and believe me, at that point, you and I were talked about the range earlier, and that's when I made the decision to actually get my equipment, get my training. So I did all that based on those events, because you can take a risk. Yeah. So in the pandemic, in your concept of training, pandemic is an example. Disaster, pandemic, doesn't matter. What is some of the advice you would give people? And maybe some guidance that you can give people just to do things the right way or avoid things, to just be safer.
I have a very short memory, so I wrote down both ways I wanted to go here. All right. So for individual people, everybody knows what they realized that they could not go a week, 2 weeks, a month without during the pandemic, whether it be eye drops, contact lens solution, toilet paper, baby formula, medication, whatever it was. Everybody now knows what they need every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So I'm not telling people to go hoard, but there may be 3, 4, 5 things on your list that you always want to make sure you have a backup to, so you don't put yourself in stressful situations, because that stress is cumulative. That stress makes you make poor decisions. If you're trapped in a house having a quarantine, it doesn't make that any easier if you're stressed, if people are hungry, if people aren't getting their medication. So on a personal level, learn from the experiences that we just had. I know we Americans, sometimes people accuse us of having short memories. My job is to make sure that we remember those trials that we had and that most of us overcame, right? And we hopefully learn from it. And that is one thing, is realize what is very important to me and my family's existence that I cannot go a month without, and then make sure I have 3 months of that in a secure location, whether it be cash, whether it be medicine, whether it be whatever it is. And then moving to a corporate, a business, a house of worship, a school level is what I found when I was teaching active shooter. I realized I was really teaching something broader called crisis management is what I was training. And one of my clients, a national business that has a lot of satellite operations and then a main office, hired me to do their active shooter training. It turned really into crisis management because every time somebody would come in, they would report a different type of an issue that really was an active shooter, but that concerned them. So now the pandemic happens right after I finished their training. And they wrote me a letter saying, Corey, we really thank you, Safety Man, for giving us this training because it helped us maintain our continuity of business because you prepared us to be able to communicate, to protect our people. Because remember, they had stores and locations in, I think, 14 different states, which meant 14 different mask mandates, 14 different virus mitigation strategies, 14 different political affiliations of people are going to believe and not believe, and they still had to maintain that continuity of business and so forth. And they were able to do that, I'm not going to say without incident, but they were able to do that much more successfully than somebody who hadn't thought about this or planned about it at all. So personal, we learned what we needed to learn 2 years ago, what we needed, and then professional, you know exactly what you need to do when we had to start doing things via Zoom and having to start doing things with people working from home or remotely. There were certain things that we needed to make sure that we had to maintain that continuity of business.
Thank you. That's pretty powerful stuff. And you're right. I mean, I like the way you broke it down. I mean, the individual concept versus like the corporate, and you're right, the different scenarios. And you're right. The pandemic did teach us, like, really at the onset of it, everybody was like, oh my God, I need this, I need this, I need that. But to your point, now we know. So just get prepared, have to your point, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever that you needed the most of, and be ready. You never know what can happen. I mean, you get an earthquake, God forbid, you get, storm, you get landslide. I don't know if, some places could be prone to those things. I mean, you get tsunamis, God forbid. Like in a couple of months back, there was that whole volcano in Canary Islands, I think. Yeah. And there was a big discussion about potential tsunami, waves coming through, and there was some even reported. So it was crazy. So people, I mean, when you hear tsunami, what do you think? I mean, especially people that live close to the water. I mean, there's very little you can do. You can't outrun it. And then sometimes, the warning could be so close that's not even funny. And even if you get to roads, what are you going to do? You're stuck. So there's other ways you can potentially, survive these things. Right. But it's just a matter of knowing, learning, asking questions, maybe hiring someone who's an expert to help them, at least get into a prep, motion or prep mode, because that's a big, again, I use this 5-letter acronym, the 5 Ps. So prior planning prevents poor performance for business. But here is the same thing. I mean, just prior planning will probably prevent you from having a poor outcome.
Exactly. We use the same saying. Prior planning prevents poor performance 100%, because no planning guarantees poor performance, right? Yes. So no planning guarantees poor performance. It's the one that I use, because I want to get my clients to have some plan, even if it's not the top of the line Cadillac plan that I can offer you, or Tesla plan, whatever the best car is nowadays, the Cadillac Lyriq electric car, right? Even if you don't get that one from me, if you just get something, that's going to cause you to help. Norman Schwarzkopf, if you remember him, famous Stormy Norman Schwarzkopf, he was a general when the first Gulf War happened. Mm-hmm. And he was quoted as saying, no plan survives first contact, which means that we can have a plan to send these Marines here, these armies here, these helicopters here. And as soon as the first shots are fired, things go different places. But he said, but no contact ever survives without first a plan. Because if I don't know where Hurricane was supposed to be, I'm never going to find out where Hurricane is now and what he's doing to help the mission, or if I need to go help Hurricane. So you got to have a plan, because it might go sideways, but you got to have a plan.
And Corey, that's a big point, because first of all, that's powerful stuff, of course, from a general, but but that's the knowledge of real, combat, but that's real life too. I mean, you're right. You plan all you want. You can have the best plan. And once you're in the real, it's like games, even without sports, we can dilute it to sports. Yeah. Everybody's going into the Super Bowl with the plan, and they're going to do this, and they have a tactical advantage. Yeah. Once they hit that ground, shit turns around and they have to adjust and adapt quickly and switch over, and they change that plan 5 times, 6 times, even more.
Yeah.
And it happens.
And Sean McVay, man, that's my boy. Sean McVay was so passionate. He had to hire a guy to keep him from running out onto the field. You know, that's why I love Sean McVay, and I was rooting for his team to win the Super Bowl, and they did. And I was so excited about that. Sorry, you got a little off track there, but
that's okay. I got you excited, right? That's good.
Yeah.
but again, these are concepts. I mean, military, sports, all these things. While we observe them from a distance, but we are actually in a big game. I mean, it's called life, and there's things that happen in this game. We are in a war of sword, because there's all your elements. You live in a world where there's different things that can be shot at you without you even having the prep. For disasters can happen. I mean, right now, the biggest thing that we are worried about is this whole Ukraine-Russia war, right?
Right.
It's escalating every day. And I believe it or not, if you go on social media now, there's so much stuff going on in terms of there's a lot of videos, a lot of prep, videos, or how to be ready in case of nuclear fallout and things like that.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of them already. And, it's like going back to the 60s or 40s. I forgot what decade it was, but when people were training for nuclear war and sheltering and doing stuff, we're there today. And, you think it's like, whoa, come on, that was a movie stuff, but it's real. But people don't even know. Today, sometimes you play denial, or you get into denial format because you don't want to believe it could happen.
Right.
But what if?
Yeah, take your head out of the sand. We're not ostriches. We're people. And fortunately, people like you and I aren't afraid to talk about these things. And I'll just give you 3 words for a radiological event: time, distance, and shielding. Time of exposure. So you want to minimize the time of exposure. Does it sound like I'm talking about that pandemic, right? Time of exposure. Distance, you want to keep that social distance. In the pandemic, you want to be distant away from fire, from wind, from fallout. And then shielding, you want to have something to shield you, whether it be a building, a house, a ditch in the ground, a line of trees, something strong to protect you from the different types of blasts, heat, and electromagnetic waves that could come from a nuclear explosion. So those are your friends, and a lot of things: time, distance, and shielding.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I was going to ask you about maybe tips, but maybe not as relevant for our show. But at the end of the day, that is health. If you get any radiation, God forbid, and let's hope, and I do really wish and pray that these things can get diffused and just de-escalates quickly, and it never happened, and we can go about our lives and enjoy our lives, because sometimes it's scary to think about the future. When you start thinking about all it takes is one little ego strike, and the ego becomes a press of a button, and then the rest of it is over. And sometimes words can become very aggressive, and people just say, you know what, trust me, test me, whatever, and boom. Now, the outcome of that is irrelevant, because at the end, everybody's going to get hurt, because there's no win in this particular concept.
There's no win.
Listen, if this goes to any level of nuclear level, it's the end. I mean, for most of humanity, and that's not something we want to even wish for or think of. But it could be. It is real. It's happening. There's a conflict that could. And today's weaponry is not what we had in World War I or even before. Although World War II, we did have the first, bombs, which kind of stopped it. In this event, God forbid it happens, it will start and it will end everything. But again, this is not our topic today. But just folks, I think we should be aware that at least we have to learn. What are we going to lose by knowing about a little bit of radiation, sheltering, distancing, what is fallout, things like that? I actually did my research, and I even posted it on the channel. But just safety, anything that can help you be healthier in a way and safe and live a longer, happier life, physically, mentally. Because that's the other thing. There's a mental challenge with all safety, because people panic, their mental levels are completely off. Conflict is also from a mental displacement, right?
Yeah. That increases that stress level, which takes you away from enjoying yourself. It ages you. It causes all types of different health things, from high blood pressure to so many other things. It can make healing even harder or more arduous if you're constantly stressed about something. So that's why I'm a big proponent of, if I go someplace and I scan it and I know where my exits are, I know my entrances are, I know if there's security there, I tell my people that I'm with, all right, here's primary exit, here's secondary exit, here's primary meetup location, here's secondary meetup location. And as long as it took me to do that, it's over. They bear with me. They just look at me. They nod their head. Okay, safety man. And I'll take the hit. Call me what you want. I'll take the hit. but that information got there and now they know it. So heaven forbid we get separated and we have to exit through different exits. We know to go to CVS, wait 5 minutes, and then go to the bank and wait 5 minutes, and then go back to CVS and wait 5 minutes, and then eventually, hopefully, we'll connect with each other, assuming cell service is down. So we make the plan, communicate the plan. Then if something happens, we enact the plan.
Well, thank you. By the way, a lot of people can literally, they're hearing you now. They're like, wow, that's interesting. But if you work in a corporate space, there's a good chance you've done a fire drill, and or school even. And fire drills do give you those placements where you have to go and group one meet this and floor this one meet here. And so you've probably been to some sort of training, but even if you haven't, for whatever reason, because you haven't been in the corporate world and maybe you work as independent, whatever the case may be, these are things that you can also practice. You just have to figure out. I mean, another thing, I think everybody's been to a movie theater. and that's the other thing. You can see it on the screen. They give you notice your first exit. So they give you that education without even you thinking about it. It's already there, just suggested to you, and you condition to it without even, highlighting. I mean, everybody knows it because you walk in, they tell you, and you look at that exit. I have one behind, I have a front. And you don't even pay attention. You move on. But that's the prep. You just kind of like be aware.
Yeah.
So I know that for you, it's a little hard. Everywhere you're gonna go, you're gonna be like, this.
Well, yeah, because people are going to look to me for it. They're going to look to me for what do we do, and I got to have a plan. It may be nothing. It may be just hide, stay down, be quiet. And I'll cover you. I'll wait for either to take out the bad guy or to get us out of here or whatever we're going to do. Run, hide, fight. One of those. We're going to pick one of them. We're going to do it. We're going to do it 110%. And be ready to switch from run to hide, from hide to fight, from fight to run. We might be able to have to switch depending on what the bad guy or bad guys or what the situation throws at us. So I always teach my clients to draw that line. What am I going to allow somebody to do to me or my family before I go 100% medieval on them, right? I may be able to take a push. Hey, man, I'm sorry. As long as you're not hurting me, you got this. You're right. I'm sorry. Let me buy you a drink. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm an a-hole. I wasn't paying attention. I could take that. You put your hands on my wife or my kids, now it's going to be a little bit different, right? You're going to see a different Corey. Not going to see so many teeth, okay? It's going to be a little bit different on that. But that's in my head. I already know what that's going to look like.
Well, it's funny because that's again training, years of training, and safety in martial arts. You almost kind of observe exactly what's going to happen, who's going to be around, what chair you're going to have in front of you, what elements are going to be blocking you, what potentially. But all of that is happening in a split second, and you still kind of like keyword you said, run, hide. Both of them are evasive.
Yes.
And the last one is the offensive, which is basically your last resort.
Yes.
And so that's powerful because, I mean, just by saying it that way, you're already you're not really executing on an action. You're just kind of in martial arts, there is what we call Aiki or Ki. So Aiki is like when you absorb it. Ki is when you actually offend and just go,
okay.
Just like Aikido is more about absorbing, your force and taking you around and slamming you all over the place without doing more. And it looks real cool, when you watch it, but it does work. For people that may have a little doubt, it does. I mean, obviously you have to learn both tricks. Yes. But the fact is, you mentioned those things, and you mentioned something quickly about radio or cellular, phones or whatever, if they're not working. Let's talk about that because that's a big deal. People today live on their phones.
Yes.
And the world is on the internet. And we've seen that, not in the pandemic, but I know in Sandy, when it was a storm, cell towers were down.
Yes.
Cell phones, people were stuck. They couldn't even communicate with each other because they didn't know how to do it. So what would be some of that, advice you can give people for that?
So pre-planning, again, is where are we going to meet? So let's say there is a superstorm coming. I'm going to tell my wife, I'm going to tell my kids, if we can't get back to the house, we're going to meet at the middle school. If the middle school is not an option, we're going to meet at the high school. If the high school is not an option, then we're going to meet at my brother's house. So I'm going to give people 3 locations that we can meet and regroup and then figure it out from there, right? To do that. So again, make the plan, communicate the plan, and then enact the plan. Believe it or not, even if cell phone towers are down, sometimes SMS or text messages can sometimes still work. Sometimes email can still work because they're using a slightly different system than that straight thing. So even if you just send a message and you may not get the little thing that tells you that it was read, it still may be out there and that tower can come back up. It may be waiting in a buffer and then it can shoot it back down when they come up. Because a lot of those things, once they get powered, they can power themselves up automatically and remotely. I have friends that work for some of the major telecoms, and they're telling me how they're programmed to do that. But again, learn how to read a map. You and I probably grew up learning how to read a map before GPS, turn left in 50 feet. We didn't have that when we first started driving. You actually had to look at the map, plan your route. Okay, it said turn it to Wawa, and then you'd go turn it to Wawa. You kind of need to learn how to do that and have one as part of your emergency kit, have one in the glove box of where you're likely to travel in your car. So heaven forbid your cell phone battery dies and everything goes sideways, you can at least look at where you are on a map and either direct help to you or make it the shortest route to go get to a safe, secure location.
Well, Corey, thank you for that, because to your point, right now everybody is using like GPS, Surrey, and all these things are built in. But you're right. Once that's done, I mean, I grew up when you had that book and the map that you flip up and you have to figure out what your where you are and look at where you're going to be and where you're going to make turns and different points of reference and stuff like that, monuments. But we don't have that. And a lot of the new generation is not even trained to do that. So yes, thank you for that, because I think for our audiences, anybody watching and listening, take mine, buy one, keep it safe. It doesn't hurt. They have those Atlas books that you can order and you can have them for your region and just keep them. You never know.
Exactly.
Even use them as just a collectible. Who cares? But they'll be good. They'll come handy. Even if you never use it, that's a good thing. Just frame them. But when you need to crash that frame and take them back,
break it. Break a case of emergency, right?
Exactly. But it would work. And by the way, that's the other extreme would be like if you're lost, you're on the trail and maybe get into the woods. I mean, there are some basic ways you can also find your way. I mean, there's so many things, but there's safety courses and things, and you do these things, right? You help people for all types of emergencies and tactical advantage.
Yes. And also not afraid to know where I am not qualified to provide instruction. So I do have a team of experts that I can refer people to that can help. Like sometimes I'll get domestic violence survivors that'll come to me asking me for assistance. While I've investigated a lot of domestic as a law enforcement officer and I can help advocate for them, there are people that are much better trained to be able to advocate for them that I have on my short call list that I can direct them to that. So same thing with the trail. The one thing I will tell you about walking in a trail, if you're starting to get lost, start marking your trees, right? Just with your knife, a pen or something, a sharp rock, just draw an arrow the way you went. So what always happens, we start walking in circles again. You come back and you see that arrow. It's like, oh, I already went this way and now I'm back here again. It can help mitigate, conserve your energy, conserve your resources, and help eliminate areas that we know we don't need to go check again because it just brought me back here, right? So even if something as simple as that, just marking a tree with an arrow pointing that way could potentially save your life.
Thank you. Well, that's big. And a lot of people, especially in I guess the summertime and spring, and they like to go on trails and things. And sometimes, I mean, I'm talking about some of the trails are kind of synchronized, they're protected, they're very well lit up, or they have ropes and things. But if you go just off the grid, that's where it becomes challenging. And or even if let's say you get stuck on the road, then you want to seek help and you wind up in the woods and you're stuck. I mean, I sound like I'm very crazy dramatic, but believe it or not, this can happen to anyone anytime. I mean, I was driving one time on the road and my car shut down in the middle of nowhere. and it was dark, it was night, and there's nothing you could do. You got to figure yourself, what you're gonna do. You're gonna walk. Well, I mean, I'll tell you a story. It's crazy stuff happened to me. One time I got stuck in an elevator and and there was nothing, there's nobody that listened. I mean, I'm not gonna suggest it to people, but I did a little bit of a Die Hard thing and went up. but I'm telling you,
don't do that. That is not advice.
Don't do that. I did it. I was stupid. I was a kid. But the fact of the matter is, stuff happens and you don't know where it can happen. Nobody thinks like I'm going to get stuck, or I'm just going to be dry. But no, stuff, have your backup, things with you, at least basic tools in your car. I mean, small knife, whatever, pliers, some things that can assist you with whatever. And again, I'm not the expert, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. If you go to FEMA.gov, so anytime there's a major storm coming or something like that, you go to FEMA.gov. They have websites where they'll talk about a safety kit for your car, and they'll also make it regionalized. So if you're up in the Northwest where it's going to be 2 feet of snow, or if you're down in New Orleans where potential water is the problem, or if it's in California where wildfires might be the problem, they'll have it broken down to those individual regions to determine what you want to mainly supply that safety kit with. Blankets, water, protein bars, signaling device, something to keep you warm, something to potentially dig out, and a radio, weather radio, so you can listen to upcoming news and so forth. And to do all those different things.
And thank you for that, because the way you place it is, I love it, because you're right. It varies from region to the other. You're not going to need the same things, because one is too cold. Maybe there's an avalanche that can happen. There's fires, and in the South, maybe even, you get attacked by snakes or gators or whatever. There's other dangers that can happen. So I think those measures can be, according to whatever you are. And by the way, I think a lot of stuff you mentioned is not very difficult to even collect. You can go to Walmart and just pick all that stuff up. Any of the stores that you get, hardware store. I mean, there's a lot of things you can buy that can be useful. And you're right, FEMA is the best resource. I mean, in terms
they're
of
a very good resource. Yes.
But another resource is how to train about it. So that's where you're in effect.
Yeah.
Team. But so Corey, you talked about earlier about those 3 outcomes. So I wanted to go back to them about not to get liable criminally, whether you're civilian way or I guess legal way. So let's differentiate that. What is the main, because people don't know that. I get into a conflict. Now what?
So first I got to get you and your loved ones safely out of that conflict. So depending on the level of force being used against you is going to determine legally what level of force you can apply to save the lives of you and whoever you are with, right? And again, so I'll use you as a good example. As a martial artist, you're going to be you're going to be held to a higher standard than someone who's never trained in any martial arts. I know there's registering hands as deadly weapons. An old wives' tale thing, like, right? But you still are going to be expected to know things and expected to be able to control things. But you're going to meet that level of force with some force that's greater to ensure that you have no harm. The law does not require you to suffer any harm before you react. You just have to be able to articulate, to explain that harm was apparent, so I prevented it and got my family or just myself out of harm's way. So I want to make sure that you're safe and that we get you home or to a police station or to a well-lit, populated area, so you can then get on 911 and call the authorities and do that. We're not vigilante and going back around and running over people in our cars. So that's the first thing, is that physical safety. Secondly, I want to keep you out of jail. I want to make sure that we're following the law, and the law specific to where you are, because New Jersey's use of force law for private citizens ends as soon as deadly force ends as soon as you get to your front door. So deadly force in New Jersey is only authorized to protect life inside the home. Now you go to a place like Florida, Texas, or even Pennsylvania, that deadly force can extend outside the home. You just have to prove that you're being potentially harmed outside the home. And in some states, they have the castle doctrine, where you just can protect the home in and of itself, the sanctity of the home, not necessarily having to prove that you were in danger, just that there was somebody violating the sanctity or the bounds of my home. They were trespassing in my home and refused to leave. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate about which one is morally right or wrong, but I will tell you that we all see what happens in the court of public opinion. You could be legally right, but morally on the fence, and people can tend to take sides on that. So no matter what you do, there's going to be 50% of the people who are going to like you, 50% of the people who are not going to like you, which is why that third one, that civil suit, where even though you may be found not guilty criminally, you may face a years-long civil suit where there could be a judgment, a financial judgment against you in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, if you take someone's life or injure them in such a way that their life is now permanently changed for the rest of their natural life. You could be paying for that based on a decision. So that's why we always want to first is de-escalate, exit the situation. There was just a case 2 days ago in Philadelphia where a bouncer just big time right hooked the guy in the head. The guy fell. What do you think happened? Hit his head and subsequently died after they threw him out of a club. Unjustified use of force. That person's going to be charged criminally, and there's going to be a civil suit against him. And unfortunately, the rest of his life, that security guard bouncer's life, is now, 2 people's lives are now ruined because of that one poor choice, probably based on ego and poor training, right? probably based on ego and poor training. So I got to keep you safe. I got to keep you legal, and I got to keep you from being civilly sued. And on the end of that, when I say tactically, legally, and morally sound advice that I give people, I want you to wake up feeling as best as you possibly can after having had to use a high level of force to defend yourself or your family, because there will be that Facebook, that Twitter, your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, and your coworkers who are going to have differing opinions depending on what the suspect looked like, depending on what you look like, and depending on the region that this event took place in.
That is big. I mean, thank you. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. And even understanding the difference between those elements, I think that's key for us, at least for our audiences. And I think this not only in the US. I mean, we cover mostly what we know in our environment, but a lot of this stuff probably would apply to any nation to a degree. I mean, some nations may have different rules, and you know, some nations may not have guns and maybe have different, but a weapon can be anything. I mean, in our world, we know that a paper can be a weapon. Depends how you use it, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is, to your point, is the action and how you use it, and you know what level of extreme measures you use to defend or assault, and that's really the bottom line. And you're right. You know, people judge for various reasons, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of that justice.
Yeah.
And we see it in all parts of the world, and
exactly.
In the US, we see a lot of it all the time. And it is sad because it divides, groups, families, relatives, friends. And now with social media, everything is viral. One, two, three, you're on camera.
Exactly. Everywhere. So one thing that I tell my clients, assume if you're not wearing a body camera, assume that you're on 1080 HP or 4K, I think they're up to now, and cell phone cameras. Assume that you're on 4K from 4 different angles whenever you do something. So play the part. Play the part. You're an actor on a stage and people are watching you. So if you've pre-planned this assault at a bar, or this person coming up to you asking you for your watch, if you pre-planned it, okay, I'm going to comply. Whatever you need. Do you want me to take my watch? Here, I'll take my watch off for you right now. You can have my watch. Please just don't hurt me. Let my wife get out of here. All right. And we're going to read that situation and comply, but I'm ready to defend myself. You notice my hands are up. When I'm doing this, my hands are up to defend myself, but I'm also showing him that I'm complying, that I'm about to take my watch off. And if it stays a property crime, if his eyes are focused on that watch and I take the watch off and I drop it in front of him and he decides to pick it up and I run and he doesn't chase me, okay, it was a property crime. If he slaps the watch down and comes after me, now I know it's a personal crime. And now I know it's go time. Now I'm tacking the eyes to throat, the ability to stand, or the ability to breathe. I'm making this person so they cannot hurt me or my family. Okay. I'm not going to just jab them and see what happened and hope that it works. Okay. If you put your hands on me, you make me in fear of my life, you will go to the hospital.
Well, Corey, thank you for that. And it's funny because your emotion is exactly how I would behave myself. So, and you're right. We attack, soft tissue, joints and stuff, because you're nicely buffed. I mean, if I punch you in your chest right now, you'd be like, what the hell was that? I mean, it's a tickle. Hello.
Well, no, I did chest yesterday, so it's really sore right now.
You know what I mean? But the idea is that, muscle is going to absorb, but you need to know. And most of the people will get into fight. That's what happens. And you don't want to get a fight. I mean, in our training, for example, the way our professor taught us is that you want to make it, end it right there. That's it. They have to be facing down. You're locking them down. That's the bottom of it. Finish basically your technique. And you don't want to get into a sparring context or a grappling, because that could be one way or the other. It doesn't take much. Somebody can be just as trained and they can do stuff. Normally, to your point, anyone that is well trained and martial artists usually are more controlled than the rest, because they know what it is. They can handle themselves. Most people will try to challenge you anyways. Like, oh, you think you got this? But at the end of the day, you know how to do it because that's your practice. And if I'm standing, you and I right now in the street, and we have a discussion, we're probably going to just read off each other that, you know what, this is not going to work. I mean, you're going to get me, I'm going to get you. We're going to be working on something, and we're going to just respect each other, and it makes a difference. It happened to me one time, actually. I had this guy, and, we got into this debate. I said, look, dude, you want to fight? I can fight. And it looks like you can fight, and we're just going to be fighting, and nobody's going to win. I literally went. It's like, listen, you do martial arts. It's like, I do martial arts. Okay, so we're both, can handle our situation here. There's no reason for us. It's a stupid thing. Let's just back off. and we hugged each other. It was a cool thing. We became friends.
Great. That's great. That's de-escalation 101. That's perfect. That's great.
But it happened. I mean, and it happened very quickly. So this guy kind of like, it was a road rage thing. And, it was like all over the place, making, some gestures. I stopped, I was like, what the hell? What's up? And then we come out of the car and he's like, what are we going to do?
Exactly.
Are we taking action here or are we going to talk? So let's not even do this. We have families. Let's just be cool. And we became friends.
And
so
kudos to you for reading the situation, not letting your ego cause you to make a poor decision. Because say you dig into a fight, there's two outcomes. You get to the fight, you win, that guy gets hurt, you get locked up. You get into that fight, that guy wins, you get hurt. You could still get locked up, but now you're hurt. And now your family is missing you in both of those situations. He may have a weapon that you don't know about. He may be a second striker, and this is his third strike. He may be going to prison. We don't know what this person is bringing to the table. So why let him open that suitcase in front of us? So like you said, I love the way you said you did. I said, listen, you know how to fight. I know how to fight. We're just going to be fighting. Nobody's going to win. So you de-escalated that situation perfectly. And you're being honest and open and believable, which is why it worked.
Well, again, I mean, I had my stance. I was my distance. I'm watching. He's looking at me like, is this going to be real? I'm like, it's as real as you want it to be, but let's not go there because there's no reason. We understand it was a mistake. We got excited a little bit, but there's no reason to go further. And I was like, well, what kind of art you do? And we started having a discussion and it became a whole cool thing. But that was it. But you're right. Things can very easily happen quick and you don't know. Someone can just, like you said it, this guy just boom, one punch, he strikes and he's dead. And now he's in jail or forever. Maybe God forbid, depends on your state. You can even be, it could be terminal for both sides. So it's not a cool thing. Nothing. Like I said, the best fight is the one that never happened. And it's easier because there's no win. You want to fight, go to the cage.
Exactly. Improve it.
Let's duke it out in the cage, get out of your system.
Yeah. Like the Gracie said about 20 years ago, right? We'll get in the cage. We'll settle this right now.
And that's cool. I mean, I wish the word can do that. Like I had the joke one time at a show. I said, you know what? If all those powers that are clashing in the world just meet up, you get into a fight, or do a dance off and just walk out. Then we solve a lot of problems. Solve a lot of problems, man. So I know we're getting into the time frame here, but I wanted to just touch on two elements. One is I know we're talking about active shooting, and what is active shooting? I mean, it sounds what it is, but how it word. I mean, is there anything to look for? I mean, other than you start hearing the noise. I mean, is there anything that people can do to kind of even avoid being in front of any of this if they hear noise or whatever? Because you see in movies or even in sometimes TV, you see like people running, but they don't know where to run into.
Run to cover, run to concealment or cover. So concealment hides you like behind a rack of clothes. A rack of clothes isn't going to stop bullets, but if that guy's 20 yards away and he's looking for targets and he doesn't see you, he may not shoot. So that would be concealment. Cover, a concrete wall, down behind some heavy things that are actually going to be able to stop bullets. So cover will provide both concealment, i.e. the person can't see you, and cover where if he does shoot in your direction, those bullets will not hit you, hopefully. Or if they do make it through, they're going to make it through and have so much reduced power at the end that they may not be as fatal. So if we are going to run, we want to get to an exit if we can. If we can't get close enough to an exit, get to concealment or get to cover if we want to do that. But again, that all talks about kind of having an idea of where we are, being aware of what we're doing. You kind of asked on what to look for an active shooter. There's a great book called Left of Bang. And what Left of Bang was made for was the Marine Corps hunter killer who was going into asymmetric warfare. So think about going to the Middle East where your enemy was an insurgent who was dressed exactly like the average populace, intermingled with the populace, and sometimes even used the indigenous population as cover and concealment, right? So it was the other nonverbals in the body language, and they just weren't acting like everybody else at that same location. So think of the last movie you went to that people were excited to see, and you're watching people in line in the new Batman movie or whatever it is, and people are so excited to see it, or standing in line to get the new iPhone. You could sit there and scan that line and then look at everybody's level of excitement in their demeanor, and then you'll find one person who just for some reason maybe sticks out. That's the anomaly. And those are the things, I could talk about this for hours, but the anomalies, the person that doesn't fit the baseline, that stands out, that's kind of the person that we're going to look for. Not dressed normally for the atmospheric conditions, doesn't seem like they're happy in a place that everybody should be happy in. Maybe they're expressing too much dominance in an area where everybody's just kind of chill. All those different things start to add up. And I'm not doing justice. The book Left to Bang really explains what we want to look for that active shooter. But again, we want to have a place, we want to plan to run, hide, and fight. We always want to be able to define an improvised weapon. At least 3 improvised weapons on our way out of where the danger area is. 3 places to hide that hopefully can provide cover, if not concealment. And then 3 exits in case exit 1 is blocked by a bad guy. Exit 2 just wasn't unlocked by the management. And then finally, we have to resort to exit 3 to get to a safe location. So 3, 3, 3 in that run, hide, fight. 3 weapons, 3 exits, and 3 places to find cover, concealment, or hide.
Well, that's some serious, powerful advice right there for people. Just take that to the bank, right? I mean, it's the real thing. Yeah. So Corey, I know we're coming to the end of the show, but I did have one more item I wanted to ask you before we go about your business and just how people can reach out to you and the services you provide. So we talked about safety and home defense and things, but the topic of, I guess, owning firearms and home protection is always a relevant, discussion. There's a lot of controversy about that, especially in the light of politics. We have, a little bit of 2 extreme sides of it. Depends what state you're in. I mean, in the state of Jersey, for example, it's a different place. New York City is one. Pennsylvania is another. I mean, tri-state right there, but it's different rules and laws. Carry on versus not carry on. Conceal carry, not conceal carry. All these things are in play. But so the advice, I mean, certainly every state you have the ability to actually have these things, and you can buy a firearm legally and keep it. And there are safety measures you have to do with that. Your advice, to that, I mean, do you advise it? Do you not advise it? If it is advisable, what would be some of the tips you can give people and how to really properly use it correctly in terms of safety concept?
Hurricane, that's a fantastic question. It's one of my favorite questions to answer. So the first thing, it's got to be a family decision. Okay. It's got to be, you and the significant other have to agree that, okay, we're going to get a firearm for self-protection to protect our lives and the lives of the family. Then you have to account for how old are our children. Are they going to be the kind that are curious and looking for it? We can handle that. That's fine. Are they going to be so small that if we do have to employ this deadly force, somebody's going to have to be physically picking them up and running the safety with them? So we're going to build an entire plan around it. Okay, I'm going to give you a violin, but if I don't give you music to read and a conductor to start, you're not making a song. You're just not going to do it. And if I don't train you how to play it. So we're going to make the decision as a family, build a plan around it of when it's going to be employed, figure out a safe way to store it to keep small hands away from it, but make it quickly accessible in the event of an emergency, because the bad guy is not going to wait. So they make biometric safes and small safes that are perfectly sized for shotguns and handguns that you can just do a 4-digit code, or just like your smartphone, you can put your thumbprint on it, and it can pop open and you can have your weapon right there accessible. I also recommend that you get, like me, a certified trainer who's going to train you how to get that weapon loaded, unloaded, make it safe, fire it accurately, effectively, legally, and morally, and then what to do after you had to employ deadly force, whether you're going to escape, hide, barricade, call 911, do all those different things. So there's a whole training plan that I give my private clients. I've had people show up with the box, with the gun still in the box with the tape on it, never even taken it out. And in 2 hours, they have been hitting bullseyes with that firearm and feeling much more comfortable, much more safe when they do that, because I take them through the steps to make it safe, legal, and effective.
Well, that's pretty good stuff. I mean, I got more for back and forth here. Thank you for that. But actually, with that, I do want you to make sure that our audiences, at least those folks, whether in the States or elsewhere, but I think now you can do some of the stuff virtually as well, right?
Some things I can do virtually, yes. So verbal de-escalation, we can do virtually. Crisis management, we can do virtually. Some things for active shooter, we can do virtually. Training the trainer. where I could train you how to go and train your people and execute these drills. We could do virtual tabletop exercises for your location. Okay, we have all the power went out. There's a fire. A car crashed into a building. A tornado came. The pandemic's back, and now we can't do any. Whatever it is, we can do tabletop exercises for all those different things. Not to mention active shooters. So yeah, we can do some of it virtually, but obviously training with firearms and things like that, carjacking, things like that, we do need to be face to face for that.
Well, again, you're close enough. I think you're bordering a couple of states, right? So you're not too far from Philly and, in the Jersey side, I believe, right?
Yeah. I'm 15 minutes from Philadelphia, hour and a half from New York City.
Well, again, so and if you live in this jurisdiction, let's reach out to our safety man, the one Corey, and really there's some real value here, and you might not think that this is something for you, but know that emergency can happen to any one of us any given day, anytime, without any warning, and better be prepared than not be prepared. And you're right, sometimes we don't want to wing this, we want to do it right. In the case of firearms and things like that, they're not toys; they're deadly, tools. And like I remember, I did a safety course a long time ago, and it was a hunting course. And what they said is, when we talked about safety, and they said, the first question is like, "What is safety?" Is like, and everybody points to the safety button. It's like, no. Safety is a mechanical device that can go wrong. The best safety is to know how to operate it and make sure you do. So it's about you, not about the actual machine or whatever that the tool that you're using. And I'm just, paraphrasing here, but the firearm that you use can be just that. I mean, it could be used for good or bad. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's the operator behind the gun. The operator behind the gun causes way more problems than the weapon itself.
That exactly. I mean, well, that's the other thing. I mean, the debate that's happening today is that, a lot that we cannot have these, we cannot have that, but no weapon does anything wrong. And I don't want to refer to it as weapon because I know that's frowned upon. Weapons for military and firearms is for the regular discussion.
Sure.
So technicality for those people that just don't want to, get technical. But the fact is, you have it. Those that if you apply for a permit, and you go through the routines and you go through back checks and all the stuff, you're doing it by the book. Chances are you're actually going to keep it by the book. And if someone wants to do something and harm, they don't go through those roads. They're gonna go to the back road and get the stuff that is not legit and make it whatever it is that they need to do. And they're not. There's nothing you can do to change that. But be prepared for it. I think that's the key.
Exactly.
So 100%. Corey. So how? I mean, safety.co is actually the site. I mean the actual.
That's my website, safetyman.co. There's no M. There's safetyman.co. is my website. Everything all comes into there. So firearms, active shooter, crisis management. I'm working with these 4 Navy SEALs, an Army Ranger, and a Marine, and we're getting together. We're training private citizens over the course of a weekend, May 21st and 22nd in South Jersey, and we're giving them moral, legal, and practical tactics training and experience on how to defend themselves with weapons inside their homes. We're actually training them how to do that, and we've been having some really good success with it. And it's just expanding when we're doing that. We're looking eventually to be able to go nationwide with that and have a mobile training unit to be able to go to different states and find out what their use of force policy are, make sure we're training people to the laws of their jurisdiction of how they can safely defend their family with legally owned firearms. And if I got the best warfighters in the world, the United States Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and Marine Corps, combined with my SWAT experience and my use of force expertise in the state of New Jersey, we put that together and try to give them the best package. Like we said earlier, that our victim is going to survive, our victim is not going to go to jail, and our victim is much less likely to be successfully sued civilly.
Well, thank you, and that's powerful, actually. So, by the way, is there any age limit to clients that you can? I mean, obviously you train adults, but certainly if they want to train their kids, I mean, is that possible? Or
absolutely,
just in case someone wants to ask the question.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had one of the instructors brings his son who's 12. My 16-year-old came to the last one, did fantastic. So it's up to the parent. If you feel that your kid, we're using airsoft guns, so we're not using real guns. So there's really, as long as you're wearing face protection and cover your eyes appropriately, you might get a little welt on you from getting hit by it, but there's no real chance of getting injured. So we're learning concepts and tactics. So based on the parent, if you feel that your kid is mature enough to handle the conversations that are going to be attached to this, that we're actually shooting somebody, and potentially killing somebody who's trying to kill mom or daddy, if you feel that you can have that conversation with your kid, then absolutely bring him or her to this event. Because the more people in the family that are aware of what the plan is and how mommy and daddy are going to react, the easier it's going to be to, if heaven forbid an actual emergency happens, that this won't be the first time that they've seen or heard these commands.
Corey, I think I'm gonna be signing up with my son, but it sounds exciting. And it sounds like a fair thing, and again, for family members, if you love your kids, obviously you do know that you want to protect them. Obviously, if you do believe that you can bear firearms or whatever, some people may not have that feel or that believe, I guess, and that's okay. There's always ways to learn safety and just protect yourself differently without having to use any arms and things like that. But so this is open in South Jersey, as you said, and people can register through this on your website, right? Yep.
There's a link at safetyman.co called survivaltacticscourse.com. survivaltacticscourse.com. You go right there. You can register, get a spot. I would recommend, if people are interested, do it as soon as possible, because we can only do about 30 people before it starts to get unmanageable. So survivaltacticscourse.com, people can sign up for that. And they will, like I said, we will get people who have, done some amazing rescue tactics, from rescuing American hostages in foreign countries to capturing the heads of Al-Qaeda and Taliban and Hezbollah and Hamas and so forth, and getting them out there alive. So we're taking that skill set and giving it to citizens who have to do the same thing. Go in and get a high value target, i.e. my wife, and get her out of this place that's infected with bad guys alive. So it's the same tactics, right? Wow. And we're just bringing it down so we can teach it in small, understandable blocks to our citizens and civilians.
So, Court, may I ask, what's the price tag if that's something
it's $300 a day? $300 a day. If somebody comes both days, we drop it down to $575 for the weekend per person, and that includes all your gear. That includes all your ammunition, the weapons, the face protection, and everything for that.
Perfect. So it's all practical, or there's also some discussion, like education?
There's going to be a little bit of discussion in it, so we can explain why we're doing this tactic. We have to kind of explain why we're doing this tactic, but there's a lot of activity in it. There's going to be a lot. You're going to be tired. You're going to sleep well that night when you do that. You're going to sleep well.
It's a full workout. Huh?
Yeah. You're going to sleep well.
All right. Well, Corey, thank you so much. And just before we end, I'd like to ask, maybe 3 key advices that you can give to our audiences right now, just like basic safety or just tips.
Yeah, I always go with the 3 A's. I think I may have started with this, is always have that awareness wherever you are. I don't want you to be paranoid. I don't want you to be looking like a deer on the side of the road who's afraid to bend down and eat the grass. I just want you being aware whenever you go into a new place or the same place. When you show up for work in the morning and you're the first person to work or you're the last person leaving, before you lock that door and you're trapped in that transitional area between your office and that door, you're practicing situational awareness. You're looking, right? You're seeing what's going on, right? So awareness, avoidance. So you want to avoid dangerous locations and dangerous behavior. Don't be walking to your car, texting on your phone, okay? Because I don't care how good you think you can multitask, you can't multitask. We do exactly what iPhone does. It fast app switches. You can be looking at your phone, then you can look up and see somebody. But if you don't have that peripheral vision, you will get surprised. So we want to avoid that negative activity, right? And then finally, we want to have a plan of action. So that action might be, I'm going to run to my car and get in. I'm going to run back to the building. I'm going to scream for help. I'm going to fight for my life, whatever it is. I've already thought about it. Maybe I'm walking with a pen in my hand. I have a tactical pen. I have a taser. I have a legal weapon. I have my keys in my fingers. I'm going to scrape somebody's eyes with. I've learned martial arts. I'm going to employ that, whatever it is. So awareness, avoidance, and action. Be like the Secret Service. Okay. You never see the Secret Service walking around with their protectee, flipping on Facebook and answering tweets. All right. They won't have that job that long. Right. Their heads, they're up, they're on a swivel. They're looking to make sure nothing happens. All right. And I don't want that to happen to one of my clients or any citizen. I don't like making victims. I like making victors. I want you to come out and win.
Corey, that's a best advice, and we'll take it. Thank you so much. You throw in a couple of things, so I might want to ask you to come back again and just talk about maybe like women's self defense and maybe children's safety and things like that. So we can maybe talk about those tips, especially today's generation, as you said, where our heads are in computers and phones, and we may not be as agile in terms of safety, and we put hoodies. That's a trend these days. Everybody's got a hoodie, which eliminates your view. Your peripheral is really limited. So maybe we can do something about that. Obviously, your time is valuable, but we'll talk about it if that's possible. We'd like to.
Absolutely. I love the help.
Thank you.
And I think you do a fantastic job. You make me feel really, really comfortable. Your facial expressions are good, so I can see when you're getting passionate about something, and you ask fantastic follow-up questions, so it lets me know that you're actually paying attention, which is really, really good. So Hurricane, I really want to say thank you for putting together such a fantastic interview. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. And actually, hopefully we'll use, some people would use some of the advice you have today, and maybe they never have to, but if they do and it helps them be safe and healthy, that's what we want. That's our objective. And folks, please do reach out, at least check out the safety.co and make sure that you read about stuff. I think everyone should at least take one course in their life and learn a little bit of tips. The world we live in does require that. Unfortunately, it is a fact. I mean, you can't live, and to your point, you mentioned ostrich. We can't be just head in the sand. We need to be aware, and life is just going to throw in some things. I think the new generation is going to be facing a lot more challenges than today, and that's just going to be that. So the more we know, the more we train, the more we prepped. I think it's just a powerful thing. Corey, that being said, thank you for being with us today. It's been real. It's been great. I learned a lot, and I hope my audiences will have a blast with this show. Folks, thank you for being with us and really taking the time to watch or listen and take some notes. And do check out the site. I will have the description and the link the link, I always say it wrong. the link in the description of the show. So please check it out. And, hopefully you'll get some folks that you can help them. And maybe one day they'll have a testimony said, because of you, our life is saved. Because of you, because of the tips we learn, things are better for us. And that's exactly the outcome. And thank you for the work you do.
I pray for. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Safetyman.co. Everybody stay safe and be ready.
That's right. Be ready. Folks, take it easy for now. We'll be talking soon. New show, new day, new guest, new topic. Bye for now.